as he has by inheritance obtained a more excellent name than they. For to which of the angels did he, meaning God, ever say? So to which of the angels did God ever say, you are my son, today I have begotten you? And again, I will be to him a father, and he will be to me a son. But when again he brings the firstborn into the world, he says, let all the angels of God worship him. And of the angels, he said, who makes his angels spirits and his ministers a flame of fire. But to the Son, he says, your throne, O God, is forever and ever. A scepter of righteousness is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated lawlessness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness more than your companions. And you, now notice this, because this is what we just read in verses 25 through 27 of Psalm 102. And you, Lord, in the beginning laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will remain. And they will all grow old like a garment, like a cloak. You will fold them up, and they will be changed, but you are the same, and your years will not fail. But to which of the angels has he ever said, sit at my right hand, till I make your enemies your footstool? Are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for those who will inherit salvation? So Hebrews, the author here, reveals to us that there was something so much more going on in Psalm 102. And what was going on? Don't miss this. The psalmist was actually recording a conversation that went on between God the Father and God the Son. He was recording a conversation. How do I know that? Because go back to verse 8 of Hebrews chapter 1. But to the Son, he says. Now in this, he's basically trying to help these Hebrew believers know that Jesus Christ is way better than the angels, right? And he's using this idea of basically saying, hey, when did God ever say to the angels things like this? Well, the truth is he didn't. The only person that he ever said it to was Jesus Christ. And so he's talking about, in verse 10, he starts to reveal to us this conversation that was going on between the Father and the Son. So that's pretty neat, because the writer of Hebrews was writing to Hebrews, fellow Jews, and one of the main points was to show how much better Jesus was than everything else they had been involved in. In other words, they had been enjoying the shadow for a period, but now the substance is here, and that substance, Jesus, is better than Moses, he's better than the prophets, he's better than the old covenant, because the new covenant is based on better promises. And here in chapter 1, we're seeing that he is better than the angels. And to prove this, he gives a series of quotes, nearly all of them from the Psalms, where God the Father is speaking of or to his Son. Verse 9 is an interesting case where the Father calls Jesus his Son. He refers to him as God. Now in verses 10 through 12, the writer of Hebrews quotes from the psalm that we're looking at and says that it is actually the Father speaking to the Son. So now what's important about that? Well, here's what's cool. So it turns out, guess who the man is in Psalm 102? Who is it? It's Jesus. Now if we read that, we would think, man, why would Jesus ever be talking the way that we hear the psalmist talking? Well, because the guy in Psalm 102 is struggling. He's crying out to God. Right? Would Jesus do that? Would he struggle? I mean, remember, he's God, right? Would he struggle? Would he go through things like this? Would he cry out to his Father? But it's Jesus who is the one feeling the loneliness. It is Jesus who is wondering if the Father is listening. It is Jesus who is the one facing death. It is Jesus who is the one who has enemies surrounding him and his name is being cursed. It is Jesus who is also then taking comfort in the hope of God and the thoughts of eternity and the things that are to come in God's plan. You see, here's the cool part of it. this is why Jesus can relate to us. Because I can't tell you how many times I'm ministering to people who just kind of feel like God is way, way out there somewhere and doesn't connect with our situation at all. But this reveals to us that this really is a conversation that took place. In other words, if we trust what the writer of Hebrews was saying about Psalm 102, then we know this was Jesus talking. This was Jesus revealing his humanity and the struggle in the midst of the affliction and the adversity that he faced in this life. Yeah, he knew about loneliness. Yeah, he knew about those times when he didn't feel like the Father was listening. Yeah, he knew about those times when he was facing death and surrounded by his enemy. He knew about what it meant for others to take every word that you said and twist it around. He knew all about that. So this is why he can relate to us, and this is why we can relate to him, because he went through everything that we go through and more that we are faced with. Write down these verses, and you can go read them later. Hebrews 5, verse 7 through 8. Hebrews 5, verse 7 through 8. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 18. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 18. Then Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15. See, we take for granted sometimes, I think, phrases like chapter 4, verse 13, where it said, verse 15, where it says Jesus was tempted in every way that we are, yet without sin. So you know what that tells us about Jesus? It's like, see, we never, ever, hardly, I don't think, get to the, well, I shouldn't say we never do, because there's times we don't get into it. But every single time of temptation in Jesus' life, he felt the full weight of it. And why is it that he felt the full weight of it? Because he never gave into it. See, a lot of times Matt Rummage is giving into it before I ever feel the full weight. Like, I just start feeling a little bit of the weight of it, and I'm just like, I'm giving in. But every time he felt the full weight of the temptation, he took it all the way to the end, and he made a choice to trust the truth and trust his Father. So last thing I'm going to talk about, and this is just kind of be the last point, we're going to take a look behind the curtain for a moment, okay? Just a quick look behind the curtain. So we look back at verses, go back to Psalm 102 for a moment. Psalm 102 here, back to it. Verses 23 through 24. It says, he weakened my strength in the way. He shortened my days. But I said, oh my God, do not take me away in the midst of days. Your years are throughout all generations. Don't know exactly where he was when he was praying this, but a lot of people believe it was one of two places. It was either the Garden of Gethsemane or it was from the cross. And when you read the language, you can kind of see that and what's going on. So you look at verses 25 through 28, which contain the Father's reply. And in this reply, the Father took his eyes and focused him on the bigger picture of his plan. It's kind of interesting because verse 25, of old you laid the foundation of the earth. It's almost like he took him back to the beginning. And then he says, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will endure. So it's almost like he took him back to the beginning, but then he took him to the end and said, you will remain. In other words, what you're experiencing right now is not in vain. So just think about that from Jesus' perspective for a moment. He experienced, like in the midst of the affliction and the adversity of what he faced, like he experienced what we would. He wondered, man, is there any point to this? Is this thing going anywhere? I mean, because it just seems like everything that's going on around me is wrecking. You know, oops, sorry about that. It's wrecking everything that's supposed to happen here. But he took him back to the beginning. He reminded him of where it all started, and he took him to the end, and he said, you will remain. He took him to the point of the suffering, where he said here in the text, your servants will continue. They will live forever, as some translations say in verse 28. The children of your servants will continue, or as some translations say, the children of your servants will live in your presence. So it's like he took him to the point of it. So why is it that you and I, his servants, his bond slaves, his doulos, why is it that you and I are going to live in his presence? Well, it's because of what he suffered. It's because of what he's willing to do at the cross, right? So he reminded him of the point. It was people. Your servants will live in your presence forever. So what an amazing opportunity that we have to study these texts. Because we wonder, does Jesus understand? And sometimes I'm afraid that I've made the mistake in the past. We just assumed that because he was God, that he was able to just do it because he was God. So we know that he was the perfect man, but we've got to embrace the fact for our sake that he took on humanity in its fullest. And he showed us in his life how to do it. Okay? So then you think about this as we're living our lives every day. I mean, who out there is asking the question? Like, if you really believe, like, I don't know how many times the Bible uses the term disciple to describe us. It uses the term Christian, I think, twice. And really, the only reason the word Christian comes up is in the book of Acts, because people see, like, all these little Jesuses running around. And so it was the world that actually gave the church the name Christian, which means little Christ. But the term that was used predominantly to talk about us was the term disciple. Okay? Because you've got the disciples and you've got their rabbi, Jesus. So again, if we understand who we are, if we understand ourselves as disciples, and we understand that Jesus is ultimately our rabbi, then who out there right now is asking the question, what would our rabbi do in the midst of adversity and affliction? Am I making sense? Like, who's asking that? I mean, because it's just easy for us to grab the bull by the horns and whatever the stuff's thrown at us, and we just try to figure it out here and figure it out there and just do it and fix it, right? But the thing we need to be asking is, how would our rabbi handle this? What would he do in the midst of the storm like this? Well, I'll tell you what he did. If you go back to Psalm 102, where did the psalm start? He cried out to his Father. He was looking up for help. He wasn't looking around trying to find the help from the world. He was looking up to heaven, to his Father, for the help that he needed, right? So I'm asking you, are you looking up? Are you helping others look up? Are you helping them? Are you so availing yourself right now and saying, God, I'll be your mouthpiece. Tell me what to say, I'll say it. Are you coming alongside of others? I'm telling you, it's everywhere. A day does not go by, well, I shouldn't say that, but it seems like that a day doesn't go by that I don't enter into some conversation with somebody who's not troubled by all of this. Now, I've got a lot of mixed reactions, people that don't care, but people who are really tuned in, just kind of almost blown away that you have any sense of hope and confidence in a time like this. And I'm not just talking about church people because I'm a pastor. I'm talking about out here in the world, just people that don't even know I am a pastor. So Jesus looked to his Father in the moment, and the Father showed up and brought the revelation and the bread and the truth that his soul needed in that time. Now, don't you think if Jesus did it, don't you think we ought to do it? And don't you think if the Father was faithful to meet the needs of his own Son, don't you think he's going to be faithful to meet the needs of his sons and his daughters that have come along to be that through his Son, Jesus Christ? I want you to listen to this verse for a moment. I've got to read it to you. It's 2 Corinthians. You can just write it down and you can go back home and read it. This is a verse that the Lord used a few months ago. Well, not a few months ago, but kind of a week or two into this whole thing. These are some verses that God gave me. It's 2 Corinthians 4, 16 through 18. Listen to it. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. So are we looking up? Are we following the example set by our rabbi as we read back like some hundreds of years before these moments would actually take place, that God would allow a psalmist to hear a conversation going on between the Godhead, between the Father and the Son? I mean, that amazes me. Because like, man, you're reading through the Psalms and you're just kind of like, I'm doing my devotion for the day. But man, how much does that bring that thing alive to know, man, you've got a pure picture of Jesus in his full humanity, just being honest, pouring out his heart to the Father. I mean, what an encouragement that is, right? To know that he felt this way. And this is how he responded in the midst of the affliction. So how do we conclude this together? Well, it's important that we understand that God has given us a great privilege to be his children. Amen? I don't know about you, but man, I'm glad to be a child of God. There's an old song, I think we used to sing it at the church that I was at before I came to Olivet, about, what is it, April? I'm so glad to be a part of the family of God. We used to sing that all the time. It seemed like every service we just did it for the fun of it. But I don't think there's ever been a time in my life when I've been more happy to be a child of God and to be a member of his family than right now. Right? Because especially when you look around. I mean, do y'all not see it? Am I like the only one who sees all the emptiness and the fear and the frustration of people? You see it. You got to be seeing it. If you're interacting with anybody at all, which I know some of you get stuck at work, and you kind of, if you're in conversation, you see and you hear what's going on. But here's what we got to realize, right? We're his children. And the way we live our lives matters. It matters. And it matters for others. So I was thinking about what Paul talks about at the end of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. He talks about faith, hope, and love. And so when you think about our lives, it's almost like it's one builds on the other. You see, it starts with faith, or trust in the one who is unchanging. And as a result of our faith in the unchanging one, it produces what? Hope. Confidence in every day that we live, because we know our faith is in the unchanging one. And here's what that does for us. Here's what that confidence produces. It produces a freedom to love other people. Because it's our hope and our confidence that's based on faith in him that frees us from spending these days and these hours and these moments consumed with ourselves and how all this affects me. And so that faith leads to hope, which frees me to focus on the world right now. Amen? See, I've said this before, but it's my heart and passion to dig a lot of wells. And you being those wells, right? Rather than just have one big well right here and we got to tell everybody to come and drink from this well, right? Now, how foolish is that to say, well, if you really want this truth and this life, you're going to have to come here and drink from this well. See, my heart is for you to be a well, right? So that everywhere that you go, people can come and find not physical water, but living water, truth. That you can be a part of bringing that ray of hope into that darkness, in that dark place that people are experiencing, right? So we take this example of Jesus. Yes, he experienced tunnel vision. Yes, he was challenged to turn everything inward, but he didn't. He cried to the Father, and the Father intervened and expanded his sight to see the bigger picture of his plan. So the storm is raging, but look at what our rabbi is doing in the middle of the storm. What is he doing? I'll be doggone, the rabbi Jesus is out there walking on the water, not fazed in the least by the winds and the cracks of the lightning and the thunder, but there he is walking on the water. And you know what? It gets even more amazing, because guess what he does? He walks over and he says to his disciples that are sitting kind of as best they can, safely in the boat, in complete control of their lives. And you know what he does? He says to his disciples, won't you come join me? Why don't you rise above this? Why don't you get out of the boat? Because I don't know about you, but I think somebody walking on water would get the attention of people, don't you? So he's calling us, he's inviting us, come and be like me. Step out of the boat. Let go of control. Let go of what you think is security and truly come and follow me. So by grace through faith in Jesus, we have been granted the privilege to be a child of God. But now what? Jesus said in John 9, we must work the works of him while it is day, because night is coming when we cannot work. And so as a pastor, I cannot help it. It's just who I am by nature. I'm a very practical person, okay? I think it's great to come in here and it's great to study truth. It's great to talk about all the signs that are pointing to one glorious fact. And you know what? Jesus Christ is coming. But every parable that I find in light of that tells us, all right, he's coming. But what are you doing while you're waiting for him to come? What are we doing? What are we doing? Clock is ticking. Do we realize, as we talked about Sunday, that we're the red passers? Are we truly hearing what God is saying? Father, we thank you for this message from your truth, how powerful it is. As we get to listen in on something pretty amazing, and that is a conversation between you, Father, and your Son, Jesus. It's amazing what we learn here, and we've only just scratched the surface. I don't believe we've even peeled back any of the layers. We've just kind of looked at this face value. But Father, we thank you for what you have given us. And I pray for your church, God, that you will use this time in the midst of affliction and adversity, when there's pressure and when things are against the norm of our lives, against the agendas that we had laid out, that we had set out to accomplish, Father. But as we experience this, may we follow our Rabbi in crying out to you, in looking to you and you alone to show up. Because God, you have a plan. You have a plan, and you are fulfilling that plan. And everything we are going through is for a purpose. It is to prepare us. It is to shape and mold us into being who you have called us to be. That we, in this time that we have, God, that we can impact others. That we can take everything, all the riches that we've been blessed with, and give them away to others and tell them to go and do the same for another. Father, thank you. We praise you, Jesus. We love you. In your name we pray.